Within Shambhala, there was a big emphasis on the arts and on arts that arise from kind of an open mind and an open heart. So not arts that's like a kind of personal expression. The emphasis was more on this sense of real openness that could come from non-aggression and could come from, be a way of cultivating one's own wisdom and one's own compassion in the world. So we're trained like that. I was trained in that way. And I was also trained in 7th century Japanese court dance since 1976. And this is, you know, a form, an art form, music and dance, which was specifically, you know, how the wisdom of that culture was transmitted. It was made to link the gods and the earth and the community and the seasons. Its actual function was to create this harmonious world. And I think many traditional arts were that way. And this was a big influence, that how we move or what kind of music could attract kind of goodness, or attract not only a powerfulness, but a enormous kind of sense of, you know, it's like the best of a human being and the best of human beings together. It was an expression of that in a very, very formalized way. It's been extremely formalized for centuries. But on the one hand, the improvising and working in communities, and I did a lot of work with jazz musicians and, you know, wild painters and poets, and I was at Naropa Institute and when Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky were there, and there was just a lot of experimenting across disciplines in the arts. You know, I think it was a great place to be there in the 70s. And on the other hand, there's this 7th century Japanese court dance, which really I just tried to do exactly like my teacher did, and he did it exactly like his teacher did for generations. But the interesting thing was, whether you're just making stuff up with folks, or whether you're doing something that's exactly the same, hundreds of times I've done the same dances over and over, how you pay attention is exactly the same. Like, you pay attention to the body, and then you pay attention to this 360-degree space out of which the gestures are arising. And it's the same. It doesn't matter whether it's you know, it's always that moment. It's never happened before. So that spirit somehow connected with what you would talk about when we first, I first read about it in the book, the social presencing theater. I think, oh, what's that? I wonder what that is. And then it was sometime later when you said, I've been thinking of this thing called social presencing theater. Do you think you could make that? Or something like that. I said, you don't know what it is? But it's sort of, since then, this was a great opportunity to co-create with you and with others in the community, to co-create something that was practical, useful in just seeing very clearly what the relationships were, what is our current reality here, and how could it move without concepts, without manipulating, without the shoulds and, you know, the ideas, how it could move to something that might be a little more healthy, a little bit more open, a little more, you know, not bound into concept.
I still remember when we met, and of course it's true, I had no freaking idea what social presencing theater is when I wrote about it in the book Theory U. But you know, I had I guess I saw a gap. Right? The gap is that we have a lot of mindfulness practices that are applied to cultivating the interior condition of the individual, but we have a huge lack of practices that cultivate the transformation of the social field from one state of operating to another one. That's why I got interested in the creative arts, and we use a lot of these elements in the workshops, is that I believe that the gateway to creativity is actually to activate your senses, that the aesthetic dimension is probably the most underrated dimension in all leadership, in all social change. And the mystery for me really is we know that on an individual level, the gateway to creativity is to activating your senses, to, you know, to feel it, to touch it, to really get into the, out of your mind and into the sensing, into the real world. But what does that mean for a social field? What does that mean? How do you activate the senses, the sensing capacity of a collective? So all of those were mysteries for me. I know there was a huge gap. I had some vague idea, but I was pretty clear that I had no freaking idea what it means. And I still remember that when we met, I was struck. Of course, by, you know, seeing your work was just, you know, opening up instantly a whole other universe of possibility. And I knew that if ever I would be blessed by us working together, you could actually take kind of these sort of vague ideas into something real.